All right, let's forget about dusty old law books for a second. Today, we're cracking open the actual playbook for the world's biggest democracy, the Constitution of India. And trust me, this is way more than just a document. It's the incredible story of a nation making an audacious bet on itself, written right in the middle of unbelievable hope and absolute chaos.
And that really brings us to the heart of the matter. Just try to imagine it's 1947. India is brand new, it's independent, but it's also being torn apart by the violence of partition. So how on earth do you write a single set of rules for a place with hundreds of languages, so many different religions, and a caste system that's been entrenched for centuries? I mean, that was the absolutely monumental task facing the framers.
So where do you even begin with a challenge like that? Well, before we dive into India's really unique answer, let's just zoom out and get back to basics. What is any constitution really supposed to do? You can think of it as the ultimate rulebook for any society.
Now, here's what's so interesting about this rulebook. It kind of has two jobs that sound like opposites. On one hand, it's a brake. It sets these really clear limits on what a government is allowed to do to its people. But on the other hand, it's also an engine, giving that same government the power it needs to go out and actively build a better, fairer society for everybody. And that second part, the whole engine idea, that's where the Indian Constitution really breaks the mold. See, it wasn't just designed to stop a bad government from doing bad things. It was explicitly designed to kickstart a social revolution.
And this chart just lays it out perfectly. A lot of older constitutions, they're basically like stop signs. Their main job is to say what the government can't do. But the Indian model, that's a roadmap. You have to remember, this was a society dealing with deep-rooted caste discrimination, massive poverty, illiteracy. The government couldn't just sit on the sidelines. It needed the power to step in, to fix what was broken, and to actually guide the country toward a better future. So, to make this happen, the framers built 3 specific tools right into the DNA of the document. First, you've got the preamble, which is like the Constitution's North Star, its moral compass. Then you have the fundamental rights, which are these rock-solid protections for every person. And finally, the directive principles, which are basically a to-do list for all future governments on how to create a good and just society.
Okay, but hold on a second. A government that's powerful enough to create a social revolution? Couldn't that get dangerous? Couldn't it just become a steamroller crushing everyone's rights? Well, the framers thought of that, and the answer lies in some pretty brilliant design. What they did was super clever. They split power in 2 different directions. First, they split it horizontally, between the people who make the laws, the people who carry them out, and the people who judge them. This creates this constant push and pull, a system of checks and balances. Then, they also split power vertically, from the central government in Delhi all the way down to the states and even local villages. It's like this intricate web designed so that no one part can ever get too powerful. So here's the key takeaway. While the government gets this roadmap to take action, the people, you, get a shield. And that shield is the chapter on fundamental rights. These aren't just suggestions. They are concrete, legally binding promises made to every single citizen. And these aren't just some abstract legal concepts. No, we are talking about your right to be treated as an equal, your freedom to say what you think, your right to life, your freedom to follow your faith, and your right not to be exploited. This is the absolute foundation of your liberty as a citizen of India. But just think about it for a minute. What good are all those amazing rights written down on a piece of paper if you can't actually do anything when someone violates them? I mean, a right is totally useless if you don't have a way to enforce it. The framers knew this, and so they created a kind of master key. And don't just take my word for it. Listen to this. That's Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the chief architect of the entire Constitution, talking about Article 32. This is the article that gives every single citizen the power to go straight to the Supreme Court if their rights are violated. He called it the heart and soul of the Constitution, for a reason. Because this right, this is the one that gives all the other rights their teeth. It's the ultimate guarantee. And finally, maybe the most brilliant thing the framers did was admit that they couldn't see the future. They knew society would change, new problems would come up, and the Constitution would have to change too. So they didn't carve it in stone. They created a living, breathing document. And get this, here's the proof. The Indian Constitution has been amended over 106 times. Now, your first reaction might be, wow, that's a lot. Are they changing it all the time? But think about what it really shows. It shows an incredible ability to adapt, to respond to new challenges and new ideas without having to tear the whole thing down and start over. But this flexibility isn't a blank check. The Supreme Court put in a crucial safety net. It's called the Basic Structure Doctrine. The best way to think about it is like this. You can renovate your house, you can paint the walls, you can change the furniture, but you can't knock down the fundamental load-bearing walls. Parliament can amend the Constitution, but it cannot touch its core identity, things like democracy, secularism, and the rule of law. Those are non-negotiable. So in the end, the Indian Constitution is really this fascinating story of balance. A balance between holding back power and pushing for progress, between individual freedom and the good of society, and between being stable and being flexible. It is a living thing, constantly being argued over and reinterpreted. Which, of course, leaves us with one big question. What will its next chapter be?